There are dozens of cooler companies making high-end rotomolded coolers that are super durable and super expensive. So when you pay 200 to 500 bucks for a cooler like a Yeti, there must be something to how they're made that makes them so expensive, right? Well, today we have the pleasure of touring the Cordova Outdoors factory right here in my home state of Idaho. Cordova happens to be one of the more affordable options for these rotomolded coolers. And today, you're gonna find out how they're made.
This is where it starts. We've got resin that we get in. We'll mix it in here with colorant to give us our colors. Right now we've got beach blue, living coral, sandstone, dark gray, white stone.
So this is not resin, this is just colorant. You add that to the resin.
It's resin. This is just pulverized plastic, it's polyethylene. It comes in pellet form to the grinder. We tell the grinder guy, this is what size we want, this is how it wants to flow. There's a lot of different variations as far as how each customer will get it as far as making coolers.
So you kind of specified how you want this to look from the...
You can take this same thing in pellet form, and different companies will say, I want it this thin, this thick. If you're making horse trough trailers, you don't have to have it as thin, but if you're trying to get around small bear locks or lid locks, you want it to flow good so it's ground to a certain spec to where we get it. So we'll take this, put 200 pounds into our mixer, get whatever colorant we want to make, mix it in there and shoot it into these hoppers that we have, and that's what's up there. It's the resin mixed with the colorant. That's all pre-mixed, that's ready to go. Ready to go. That's what you're filling your buckets with, taking them up to dump them in the mold. 100%, so like this one here, it's our small lid. Okay. It's already weighed out, got its color, it's a light gray lid. We weigh it out, what the size is, and same thing with the body right next to it. It's dark gray, and when we open up those molds, this is what we're pouring in. Burn and churn, they're loading them up, pour them in there, and we'll look at inventory. If an order comes in, hey, Chase wants 50 medium whites with the face on them. How much do we have? Okay, we'll start switching over to white. Ideally, we'll have that inventory, but then we need to backfill it, and I'll start loading white buckets up, and then that'll be the next run that we do over the next week or so.
It sounds like you're pretty lean manufacturing-esque, right? Like you're pretty, you can adapt pretty quick. Like if you have a big order come in, you can make some adjustments within a day or two to get going on it.
And I can stop these and not run them. And we just put another color in front, which is common. You can get a wholesale order that comes in and of literally 50 coolers. I need those. And I'm like, okay, so we got to switch colors, but lean manufacturing is where we're at.
That's awesome. So what's that he's putting on there, that silicone, or is that what it is, silicone?
That's enhancer in the spray. That's what's going to help the plastic flow better in the
okay.
Once we mix it, we weigh them out, put them in the buckets. They're going to run this thing 8 times for the 10-hour shift, pour them in there, cook it in the oven for 18 minutes. It's rotational molding. It's arm's gonna turn this way, plate turns this way, and as the molds get hotter, this resin's gonna start sticking to the sidewalls. And throughout that time it's in the oven, it's slowly melting and cooling at the same time once it's done coming from this form into that hard plastic that we see on the other side. Goes through a cooling process where it wants to separate from the mold. That's what we like. And right now in there, it's probably close to 350, 325. So it's still super gooey plastic, and it's molding and sticking to the sides, and you want to keep it rotating like that. But it would be gooey plastic right now. It's hardening now as we speak, and it'll be fine getting it off. But if we try to pull it off and unload it, it would just be a goo, and it would just warp over and fall apart. Wouldn't keep its shape. But it'll stay here in the pre-cool for 10 minutes, going to cooling for typically 10 minutes, and they'll spray it certain sides of the mold because you'll be unloading one side and you want to have it at a certain temperature. Meanwhile, that other cooler's on the other side.
You got to move fast up there.
You want to turn it in like 8 to 10 minutes on each side, but you know how fast you can turn it, so you're pulling the other coolers on the bottom are even hotter. So you'll set the top coolers to pull around 225, but the other ones are going to sit around 240. So by the time you flip to it, then it's at that 225 temperature and it's already cooled to where you can pull it out.
Interesting. But it's not gonna be rotating inside there, or it will be?
No, it'll rotate here. The fans will come on. It's gonna cool everything. They'll come and spray water inside the mold. But once it comes up there, it's done. even now that plastic's not really doing anything other than just cooling.
Right.
It still is.
It just rotates so that that layer stays even throughout, right? Because if it stops or slows or starts and stops, you're gonna get inconsistency in the thickness of the plastic.
Right. When it's real hot in there, the plastic loves the heat and it's gonna start sticking to the wall and start melting there.
Okay.
If it was too cold, the plastic's just gonna keep rolling off, and the hotter sides are gonna have the thick plastic. We've had it to where mid-cycle, the tool had a fault, we got to get the coolers off, and you'll have a super thick side where the powder pool stayed, and the other one's just going to be real thin where it didn't get hot enough. And you can tell you got to have that rotation molding going, and the heat evenly throughout the mold. There's air lines up on the top of it, and it's called a venturi. If you could see like a little pipe pointing right at the body.
The hollow cavity that you're injecting insulation in later, that's not having air injected in it now.
No, it's just the mold itself.
I got you, I follow.
So when you're pumping air into that venturi, the cool air is coming in, and that heat just creates that vortex turbulence. It pulls it in and starts heating that up even more. If those venturis didn't have air coming through, the base of your cooler would have real paper thin plastic. So it's 10-minute cycle, 5 minutes in, these fans kick on.
Okay. And that's just, so this is obviously ambient air. In here, are you cooling to a certain temperature? I mean, is the air blowing in? Is it air conditioned, or is it just pulling air from outside?
There's an exhaust, sucks it out.
Well, that's the exhaust.
But this is ambient air getting sucked in with fans, though.
All right.
Similar to this. You come over here. These things are pretty good.
Yeah.
Like we're sitting at 385 on the mold.
Okay.
383, so it's got 5 more minutes here. You want to evenly cool it.
Right.
You blast it too much, and because it still is, it's not moving so much, but you want it to cool. It's like cooking cookies.
Yep.
When it comes into here around 360, 350, they can start hitting it with water, and they'll cool just the one side of the coolers. The other side they want to keep hot, because that's the second set that we pull.
Then will they hit those with water too, or they only hit the one side with water?
Just the one side.
Okay, since you're unloading.
You got like a 20 to 30 degree
you.
differential between the two sides.
And when you say spray water, are you just going spraying directly into the mold, or are you spraying the whole
body
rack?
Just the body cavity. They'll come in and just do a quick little mist on the inside of the body. So over here in trimming, they've knocked the coolers off the mold.
Yep.
They slide them down this chute. Right now they're probably 200 degrees, so they've got this is where that parting line is. They've trimmed this off where the mold was up on the spider side where this is the flashing. They'll clean that off. Same thing on the lids. Lid's got the flashing on it. They'll trim this off, trim around the bear locks, around the T-latch area. So when it comes off, this is where the vent tubes are at. Up on that mold, the cooler's gotta breathe. When it is hot, air's blowing out. So you got vent tubes that just blows the air out. When it cools, it's gonna wanna contract and suck air in. These don't have vent tubes, these had them. So when they're on this side over here, they'll set this in here, drill through it. I don't wanna do it now because we gotta trim it. But we'll finish off the feet holes and make the feet holes there. Drain plugs are already in it, T-latches are already on it, so it's pretty much halfway there, the assembly side. There's a hand load that they'll put in that has the threads on it, and it'll make that part of it. So right now the plastic's shrinking. It's coming out hot and it's shrinking, so we put these in early. And we put these in early, so that plastic's gonna be tighter around it, make a better seal here, so it stays in this way. By the time it gets down there, it's still shrinking a little bit, but this is when it's gonna shrink the most as far as the shrink rate coming off on a certain temperature. So that'll tighten up and that'll tighten up.
Okay, I follow you.
I got something else I can show you real quick.
Nice.
We've had where the hand load came out, and we had an instance where we had to push it all the way out. So inside that mold, that hand load's in there, and that's how thick that wall is in between there.
Okay, interesting.
On the mold, it'll come on the outside, so there's only this one section where plastic will flow. It'll seal up on the outside and seal up there. So getting into those tight spaces, that's where you got to have that thin resin to where it does make those grooves in there. These are made on the corner.
Okay.
The guys on the corner of this street, they injection mold these.
Nice, all right.
So that's also pretty neat. Whenever we need them, hey, we need this many, they're right down the street.
There.
We could drive the forklift down there and pick up a bunch.
Man, hard to beat that, even getting your suppliers that close.
Yeah, yeah.
We're talking about, you know, this is obviously rotational molding, but a lot of other coolers, cheaper coolers, you know, the Colemans, the Igloos, are blow molded, and then there's like the injection molded, like, you know, Pelican, some of these other brands too. How would you explain to like a regular guy, a layman's explanation of the difference between rotational molding and injection or blow molding plastic?
I don't know much about injection molding, but on rotomolding, it's one piece of plastic.
Yeah.
It's, other than the body and the lid getting put together, rotational molding is solid, and no matter who's doing it, whatever company's rotation molding, you look at aesthetics, location, where you're at with that, it's one piece of plastic. It's going to be tough. You can throw it off the roof. We've done mini tests here where we've done it. Lots of people will test it. As far as those other coolers, they're putting their mini pieces to it, and I don't know how they do their foam goes in there, but if you can go and look at certain big stores and see the quality of it, you can see foam coming out. Once you know how to make a cooler, you want to see where the breather holes are at, where the foam's supposed to come out or not come out, how they clean it up, the parting lines. But rotational molding in itself is just a solid piece of plastic that isn't gonna break.
And it's all polyethylene, right?
Polyethylene and polyurethane on the foam.
The insulation inside.
The foam is eco-friendly. We switched to it, doesn't have Freon in it. California made the big push as far as getting Freon out of a lot of their products.
The blow molded and the injection molded are mostly polypropylene, which just has different properties, and as I understand it, a much higher melting point. So your oven goes up to, you're usually cooking those at
it shuts off at 650. You don't want to go super high.
Right, but you don't go that high.
Mid 500s. It's like cooking cookies. You want to slow cook it, but you want to have that time to where the plastic's going to be good, but you can still be efficient.
So you're saying I could make one of these at home in my own oven, just like cookies?
100%. We've done a test where we just wanted to mix up some colors, and we would do a small fill in the cup, put it in one of those little ovens on the counter one. I don't know what they're called.
Oh yeah, like I don't know either. I want to say easy bake oven, but
something like that, where we had like cupcake pans, and you can mix that plastic up enough to where it's in there, just like that resin that we've seen, and stick it in there and cook it. So you definitely, if you had a handful of that, put it in a cupcake, you can make it. That's how they do it when we're getting swatches.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
It's that same idea.
Go in the break room and.
You know, I don't know how maybe a rotisserie.
Yeah, right.
Get you one of those, you can get the rotation in on it. But yeah, it's the same idea. It's just like if you overcook it, it's going to be too hard. If you undercook it, it's going to be too soft. You got to have that right temperature of where it's at and getting the plastic to be even.
Wow.
So once you get done in the trimming area, you come over to the foam section here. We'll get that medium cavity, put it over here, close up in here. Cooler sits in there, and you put on these Destacos. Then you got the 4 holes where the feet are at. So these two will have feet put in them. These two are still left open. So they'll get that foam gun, the polyurethane, come in and shoot so many seconds of foam into it. As the foam grows around and goes, they'll have this thing we call a puck. They'll burp out the air until it's just foam coming out. Then you hold it for like 30 seconds, and it'll be done in like a minute as far as the reaction of wanting to expand out.
Yeah.
After that, it stays in here for 10 minutes. It's a rapid cure foam, and it's hardened enough. So 10 minutes, they'll come over here, pop it open. There's a little pneumatic drum in here where they'll put air in here.
All right.
Pushes the cooler up off the cavity. They'll take it, mind you, like it's already got the feet in it, the T-latches and the drain plug. They'll take it off and send it off to the assembly side. By that time, it's ambient. In here, it's probably like 80 degrees.
Yeah, right.
So it's in that 80 to 90 degrees. Foam coming out probably around 77 to 80 degrees. So
all right.
It'll stay warm throughout the process.
Sure.
Just whatever that insulation is, if it's cold or hot, it'll keep that temperature. So
I bet.
We've had some sitting back there for days with the lid on it, and you can come and it'll still be warm to the touch. But that's where that pre-chilling comes in as far as getting that ice retention. I know you've seen it and talked about it, but it'll cool the foam, it'll cool the plastic. Once that's all done, if you take one right out of your garage and put ice in it, it's gonna melt it right away because it's like you're putting it in an oven almost.
Yeah, it's sucking up all the heat right into it.
But that cooling is gonna cool the plastic, cool the foam. You put something else in there. Dry ice works the best. Don't have any voids of ice. So if you got a whole bunch of cans, fill the rest up with ice and keep it to where there's not pockets of air. Air will help warm it up even more so, but it'll hold smaller coolers 3 to 4 days, larger coolers 7 to 10 days as far as pre-chilling them, getting them done, and the usage on them.
I can do you one better. I just did an ice retention test in my yard with 40 coolers.
Okay.
40 different brands. One Cordova, your 48 quart. And it was just over the last few weeks, or a couple weeks when it's been cool, relatively cool.
You pre-chill it?
I did this, I treated them all the same. Okay. So no, I brought them out. All I was doing was ice, so I counted the first day as pre-chilling.
Okay.
But it was out there for 14 days.
All right, come off the foam fixtures, we'll bring them back here. We'll set them on this table here, and ideally they don't have the handles on them yet, so we've got these hand jigs that we have. We'll shove it over the handle, push a drill bit through it, and it'll align everything up. And then as far as strengthening of the handle, we've got these handle pins that we'll slam in there, and it's where we just drilled through, so you have that strength of this as well versus the molded handle itself.
Nice.
Then we have the handles. We'll put these on there like that and tighten them up, and we'll do all of our quality checks. Throughout the line we're checking, but this is where we check for voids. If there's missing foam, when we shot foam through it, there's a lot of variables where you could get a void. We have it down pretty good now as far as how to manipulate the foam to go across the whole cooler. But when you're shooting foam into it, over on the foam fixture, you're shooting it through here, so that foam's growing around. Sometimes it's coming over the top quicker or around the side, so you have to shoot it a certain way in a certain amount, and then to get it all to come to this side here. So once it's here, we're burping it out to where the air is making its way around and coming out, and now it's just foam that's still reacting and making that cool insulation. So then once it gets to where it's just foam coming out, we plug it, and if there is an issue, we'll check for voids here with the flashlight. You can see if there's missing foam. Then if it's the size of a dollar bill or not, we'll reject it as a second. If it's more than that, it's either going to be scrap, or we'll have a happy employee that will take it just fine, knowing it's going to be just fine.
Did that take a while to dial in that process?
100%.
The foam stuff? I mean, I imagine there's a lot of trial and error of...
There is. These are the only 2 holes in the lid, so we're shooting foam into this side. We'll shoot it down in here, so it wants to grow this way and come this way. So it's got to come this way faster than it comes straight to here, because once it's here and foam's coming out, they'll plug it. So you shoot it at a certain area, a certain amount to where it ends up here last. So the foam will start growing. They'll put their finger with the gloves on over here. Air's coming out, and you can feel the foam pushing the air out. Once the air is all the way out and foam's coming, then you just plug it there. You hold it over there for a minute, and it's solid. But as far as trial and error, there definitely is different ways. The main way you can fix voids is overshoot it. Then no matter what, as long as you're burping it out, foam is still coming. So you don't want to have a waste of foam. So you dial it into where, like, if we didn't put colorant in it, it'll be like a translucent, clear type, natural looking color. Not a white, but where you can see the foam. And once the foam hardens, it'll turn like a dark yellow. So we actually sold engineering coolers as a natural, but you can see how the foam goes. I mean, there's pockets of that foam fixture to where you can see how the foam is growing around, and you can see it coming over the top. Sometimes we'll have a flashlight and watch the foam grow. But as far as rotomolding and foaming coolers, you got to have a way to get the air out. We've got different holes that we'll put in the cooler other than just the feet, get the air out, so where it's solid foam throughout.
Very cool.
Once it's here though too, lid wise, we'll put the gasket on. We got a giant wheel over there with the gasket on it. Line it up this side here. It's quad seal is what they call it. It's a cool name. It's got the 4 sides to it.
Interesting.
We played with different types. This is the kind that we like, that fits for our cooler and holds.
Well, and unlike some others, it looks like it won't crush as well. I've got a couple where they've got a thicker kind of freezer style gasket, and some of them they fold over, and you know what, you see what I mean? They get pinched over time, and then they're creased, and you can never get it out, and then you always got this little air leak.
I've done to the bless this gasket's heart, I've done tests, ice retention tests without the gasket.
Oh yeah?
And very, very, very similar results. Just because you still have
well.
this lip here that comes into it.
Yep,
and
I can see that.
It's not waterproof as far as water seal tight. It's holding the air in, but yeah, as far as with or without the gasket, you're going to get similar results. Obviously, you want the gasket in it, but as far as ice retention, it's not going to change it that much.
Yeah.
But we put the gasket in, then we come to the drill fixture side where we got to attach the lid. We'll put the lid upside down and slide the lid underneath here. So it'll set up in here, put the body over the top of it. We'll push these Destacos down and it gives it just that slight amount of pressure to where we're nailing that lid lock that we have, the patented lid lock that's super awesome. Put the body over the top of it, and this bushing lines right up with the part of the lid or the body that comes through here and here and here. And we push the drill bit through the body and the lid. Once it's drilled through, we'll lift these up, push this forward, and then we've got these hinge pins that go all the way through the whole side here. And it keeps the lid going, holds it tight, and then we'll check for the lid lock. And if it doesn't have a lid lock, it's going as a second.
Okay.
We send it to the most important spot, QC, where we do the final checks. Look for any defects we missed throughout the line.
Yeah.
Parting lines, when we trim it up in the trimming side, where the two molds came together, they'll either buff that out, clean it up, straighten it up, do the full clean on it, make sure it has all of the parts, and then put the stickers on it and ready for the shelf after that. So she's bagging and tagging it here. Doing great, Gabby.
It's an impressive warehouse.
This is QC Alley. As far as customization, have you seen that?
No.
They're up front, they'll print these off, plot them out, or laminate them, then plot them. And then this is what I'm talking about as far as a full wrap. You're covering it up. The cooler still wants to outgas, so the stuff that he has is past a week. It's safe to put on. They'll put the wrap on, and then it sits with the wrap on for a day, just because it's going on a wet application. Then the next day they'll hit it with the heat gun and smooth it out, and it's got a full day of sitting on there, so we're not just slapping it on and sending it out.
Nice.
It stays, gets rechecked the second day, reheated, and
doesn't get stuck right in the back of a hot UPS truck where it's gonna.
So he's prepping the cooler here to get one ready to put on.
So you gotta heat it up. Interesting. All right.
Different techniques, like we've got sanders over there that will sand it off. We want to make it smooth. Use different chemicals to get rid of the residue or any type of stuff on the cooler where the sticker doesn't like it. FedEx picks up once a day, and then LTL trucks, whether we're doing wholesale orders or not, doing a couple pallets going out the door.
Yeah, I think.
And we're down in the south. It's not just winter up here in Idaho.
Yep.
Coolers die off. People are still buying them down in Texas and Florida and getting them all down there. Typically, though, in the fall, winter season, we sell our bigger coolers for fishing, hunting.
Yeah.
That's where you put the carcasses in there and they'll hold it on their river trips.
And making a cooler like this, the rotomolding, all this high-end cooler, what are some of the factors that make it cost more than, say, the $30 Coleman you can pick up at the grocery store?
I think just what goes into making it, as far as the cost of the resin, the cost of running the oven, and the quality side of it. Like I said, it's one piece of plastic. You got the whole body. It's roto-molded in there. The foam, we're making sure it's filled up. The quality checks that we have throughout the line, the good people that we have making these coolers, they love them, and they have their own coolers from this place. I think also the amount that you can mess up on, mistakes or something like that. So you got to be meticulous on what you're doing. It's a slow as smooth, smooth as fast type operation to where take your time and you're going to make a good product at the end, and it'll go from there.
What advice would you give to some company that's thinking about, whether it's coolers or otherwise, just making a product, manufacturing in the U.S.?
Yeah,
what are your thoughts about that? What would you say about that?
I think it's people living here, Meridian, Nampa, Caldwell, we get a good group of people coming through here. It's local. Their money's coming into it and the money's staying here. Making Idaho well known throughout outside of Idaho as well. As far as this market, it's, like I said, the big coolers for hunters and fishers. Idaho's great for that, and rafting, and we're a camping world, hunting world in Idaho, and everyone needs a cooler for that. And knowing that it's coming from here, their people are sweating their butt butts off making these
Yeah.
coolers here, because you definitely do that. I think just that closeness and local part about it is what makes it good.
Yeah. Well, I even notice in the, more and more local retailers anymore are carrying Cordova. So, I go to DMB Supply all the time, farm store,
Love DMB.
and they're just loaded with Cordova. I mean,
Our drain plugs are made right up the road too, so
That's awesome.
we get a lot of parts that are from here, even other materials coming from it to make the cooler. It's nice to know it's here, and even stuff outside of Idaho, still in the U.S.
Yep. Last question.
Yeah.
To your knowledge, are there any interesting or innovative new cooler technologies coming down the pipe? I mean, do you expect that coolers will evolve? And it was in the early 2000s, mid 2000s that this kind of cooler started coming out and taking the lead. But do you see any other opportunities for big changes or something really
I think
innovative?
that's maybe on the resin side of it, to where they're improving plastics, just the life of plastic and how we make plastic and get it. They're making things stronger. It doesn't need to be as thick, or doesn't need to be made this way. I think learning from our vendors as far as that side, the type of foam, like before we didn't have the eco-friendly foam. It had the Freon in it. It was still polyurethane, but now we've got an eco-friendly one.
Well, this was fascinating.
No,
Jeremy, I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, I
This was
appreciate
awesome
it,
today.
Chase. Thank you.
For anyone who hunts, camps, fishes, tailgates, or goes to the beach, everybody needs a cooler, and now you know how they're made. I hope you enjoyed this insider's look behind the scenes at how Cordova Outdoors makes coolers right here in the USA. It's pretty awesome to see outdoor companies still making stuff here. Personally, I've been using a Cordova cooler for quite a while now, and it's pretty great. And so if you want to see some of my testing on that, you ought to check out this video next. But if you just like geeking out on seeing how outdoor stuff is made, then you ought to look at this tent factory tour I did a while back. Thanks again for joining me on this tour. Now gear up and get outside.